There are occasions when Janos Starker is not touring the world as a renowned concert artist. In those quiet times, when he is at home with family and friends, the lively conversations turn to art and politics, food, science, literature. But always it is music that is the center of his life. Balance, purity, and simplicity are the musical trinity toward which he leads his students. For this, musicians gather to his internationally known seminars, as well as his university classes. This musical master touches his audience with yet another type of teaching, what he calls a musicale. Together, music lovers reach beyond the concert hall in a more intimate setting to reestablish the interaction of our musical past. It is a totally improvised evening of conversation and music making.
That new teacher was the teacher with whom I studied all my life by the name of Adolf Schiffer of the Franz Liszt Academy of Music. And things went on and on and on, and eventually I landed in Carnegie Hall and other places. But there were some few things in between that happened, and those few things somewhere along the line brought home the message that one of the most important things in musical activities and in musical life and a musician's life is teaching. And from the musician's point of view, when you teach, the effect of your teaching may go through generations, if you happen to believe that what you are doing is right. And what are the things what one can think is right is traditions, musical traditions that are handed down through generations. And some people are or have been fortunate enough, and I'm one of those, who associated with the kind of musicians who were sort of in possession of the great secrets. What are those secrets? They are not mysterious things. There is nothing in music that ever happens that is not explicable or not describable what happens. The mystery is only that why one does it and somebody else doesn't. When somebody gives a performance which sends you to ecstasy or makes you cry, it's describable exactly what that person was doing. The length of a note, the character of a note, the dynamics, the timing, everything can be described and measured by today existing machinery. The only thing is what is not explicable, that how come that some person speaks the musical language and the other doesn't. But that musical language can be taught, because the musical language is just like a language. In the teaching situation, where I'm giving master classes, I usually explain that there is a certain thinking process that goes into fixing the elements, the difficulties, and the various solutions to instrumental playing. And this I call the organized method of string playing. The organized method of string playing is not a discovery of how differently one can play the instrument from any other schools of thought, except that how to think about it so as to be able to produce it at will. This whole approach is called an organized method of string playing. Organized in such a way that every aspect of instrumental playing is put into various groups. The first group contains all these elements: how we sit, how we stand, how we find balance, how we use the muscles, all the things that happen before we actually play it, and we call that group the playing preparation. The second group contains all the things that pertains to the right side: shoulder, the back muscles, the upper arm, the forearm, the hand. The third, and how we anticipate various actions with the right arm, how we do the various bowing, spiccato, staccato, and arpeggios, and how we develop speed and so on. The third group deals with all the questions that pertains to the left arm: how we use the upper arm, how we use the forearm, how we develop the speed of the fingers, how we find the various positions, how we connect the positions, how we vibrate, how we learn trills, speed development, and so on, and how we anticipate the various actions. Anticipate or delay the actions, because there are always two ways of going about an action. Either we anticipate it or we delay. Now, the third group was the left hand, and the fourth group is for the sake of which we do all these speculations. Music making, the musical application, that's the fourth group. So as to be able to make music, and in that area, the fourth group, are all the things that pertain to a a specific piece that we play. When you start practicing a piece, usually you're concerned about finding the right notes. To go from here to there, you miss it. Once it goes, second time it doesn't, third time it goes. And invariably when you are home, it goes. When you play for your teacher or for somebody, you miss it. And then you're mad. You say, well, I'm nervous. And usually when we have a chance to ask questions and for me to answer your questions, the most frequent question comes, how do you control nervousness, right? I mean, what happens if I'm shaking and the bow doesn't want to stay on the string? Well, have you ever tried, for instance, to put your hand out like this? Would you do it with me? Put your hands out like this. Now try to tense up your upper arm. If you really tense it up hard, it starts shaking, isn't it? Now, why does it happen? Anytime when somewhere in one part of the body excess tension is applied, somewhere shaking will occur. Which means when you are nervous, somewhere you are tense. It may be that your stomach is tense, which is very frequent, and upset. Or sometimes your neck is getting very tense, and then you start shaking. Or you sit and your legs are tense, and then the whole body starts shaking. So which means this is the simplest way to realize that if you know that shaking results because somewhere there is excess tension, then you start looking for it. Where is it? And you might just find it. Mind you, usually nervousness is a very legitimate thing. Because if you practice something and you play for someone, and that piece, while you're practicing, reached the stage that there are about 80 or 100 notes that can go wrong, then there's all the reason in the world to be nervous. So the idea is to prepare something to the point where only 2 or 3 or 4 things can go wrong, and then there's less likelihood that you will shake. But that's the psychological and the preparation aspect of the thing. The physical aspects are that you have to find out, for instance, that what is the best way for you to sit when you play the cello, or to stand when you are playing the violin, and how to hold your arms and how to use your muscles. And this is what we call the playing preparation elements in instrumental playing. That you have to prepare yourself to do the things before you actually play. How you sit, or how you find your balance, or how you breathe, or how you anticipate certain actions. Now, what do I mean by anticipating actions? Anticipation in music making is the most important element. Have you ever realized what happens if someone doesn't anticipate while speaking? This is what happens. There is no fluency, no continuity. Have you ever watched what happens if somebody doesn't anticipate walking? Then it walks like this. Did you ever think about it, that why you walk and speak fluently? Because subconsciously you anticipate the next sentence and the next action, the next motion, next movement. From that comes fluency and continuity. Now, in instrumental playing, to play legato or continuously something, you have to anticipate everything that happens. If you go from one string to another, you have to anticipate the next level of the string. If you go from one place to another, we have to anticipate the next position. If we change speed, we have to anticipate the next speed. Everything that involves change, we have to anticipate, except that in instrumental playing, we have to do it consciously, not just subconscious. But hopefully, it has to reach a point when it becomes subconscious. So we don't have to think about it, that when you play a piece, now I'm going to change the string, so I'm going to anticipate here, I'm going to anticipate here, now I'm going that way. But all these things have to be fed into something almost like a computer. So eventually it becomes a subconsciously directed skill for the service of music making. Then you have time to think beautiful thoughts, that this phrase is lovely, this phrase is sad, and then you can enjoy and make other people enjoy what you are doing with that instrument. I want to try, for your sake, a few little things which you might be able to use in your playing, but that involves participation. One is how we find basically the balance so the body can be controlled at will anytime. And that requires a little exercise. And how about standing up with me? Let me explain to you that balance is needed because, for instance, let's sit down at the cello. If I sit in the chair like this, that will be very difficult to get up on the top and find the right notes because somewhere I have to make a crooked movement in order to overcome the difficulty. What we are aiming for is to hold the cello and play in such a way that without any change, we can reach any part of the instrument without major adjustment. Well, let's suppose that the cello has an end pin. If I hold the cello like this, then I can go up and down without doing anything fancy. And I can go that way on all strings. But sometimes when I have to favor one side or the other of the instrument, then the body has to find a position where it controls the feeling, the security on sitting on a chair. And for that purpose, we have to find what we refer to as the basic balance. And the way we find it, that first we stand at ease, in a way that at least about a foot apart the 2 feet. And as in the army, they say, at ease. So when you are at ease, try to lean over slowly to the left side. For you, that means that way. Okay? And try to find, bend a little bit your left knee, so that you really feel that the body is placed on that foot, so as you can lift up the right foot. Now, if you start going like this, either you haven't found the balance yet, or you drank too much. Well, it's too early. Now, to test it, that it's really on it, try to bend down as much as you can. What? That's one of the simplest ways for me to tell that who are the ones who are having strange problems. And all you have to do is that time to time, when nobody is watching because they think you're crazy, just go to the other side, do it on the right foot. And do the same thing, that place the body weight on that foot. And then lift up the other one and try to bend and see whether you can place your body weight on that foot. You're supposed to be able to go down and down and down. Okay, now, I think that it doesn't need any explanation for you to see there are some problems. Now, it's not a hopeless thing because all you do is to practice it for about 5 minutes. And then you find out that how to place that body weight on one side. So in other words, it's a very good idea to do it at home because then comes the more difficult version of it, which we hope we can do it in enough space. The ones in the first row we won't have difficulty, but the ones back there will. Shall we sit down and do the same thing now in seated position? And that's done so that you place the right foot in front of you, in sort of the center. And then you lift up the left foot. And now try to push yourself up. Now, is it coming through something that's not quite right? Which means that you have to experiment. Obviously, your body needs a different kind of balancing than mine, because you are distributed differently than I am. You weigh a little bit more, maybe, or less, whichever, but the fact is that at various stages in life, the body changes, which means the proportion is different. It's not the same. If somebody happens to be even the same height, if your upper half of the body is shorter or longer than the other person, then you need to find a different kind of a position. But the simplest is to sit at the front of the chair. Just watch this chair so you don't fall off. Sit at the front of the chair and try to find the place, the distance of the foot from the chair and in the center, so as when you lift it up, then you feel that the body can go straight up. Well, you realize it cannot be impossible because considering that I'm about your grandfather in age, I can still do it, so obviously it's possible. But it does need a little bit of experimentation. And then, for the sake of the instrumental playing, what you do is you place both feet with the distance, imagining that the cello is there, or if you want to play the violin, it makes no difference. And always try to stand up straight without rearranging your body. Which means that you have to sit in a way that any time You can get up, stand up, without rearranging your body, which means that if you sit like this, you cannot get up, so which means you have to do something else. What you're supposed to do is to sit always with the instrument in such a way that if there is fire, you can get up straight. Right? Or if there is reason to run. So, there are various reasons that one can. Now, would you please remember that when you sit down with whatever instrument you play, spend every day 2 or 3 minutes to check whether you are sitting in a way that you are controlling your movements and controlling your body, because from that moment on you will save an incredible amount of struggling and actual practicing time. And in order to give you one more hint which gives you a great deal of time saving, is would you please, you seem like a strong man, please get up and let me use you as a guinea pig. Right? Would you please just face me and shake hands with me. Now squeeze my hand as strong as you can. As strong as you can. More, more. More, more. More, more. Most of the time when we are trying to create power, we want to play loud. What we do is we tighten the upper muscles and nothing happens in the hand. Instead, what you have to practice now, would you please face partners each other and hold your hands. Hold hands, please. Little did you think that that's supposed to be an instrumental class, right? Hold hands and first try to tense your upper arm without getting any power in the hand. No power in the hand, just softly, friendly hand holding and tighten your upper arm. And now gradually start releasing the tension from the upper arm and then start squeezing each other's hands until the other one starts crying. Before too much hurt is done, we can do it individually as well. Make a soft fist, just a soft fist. And now tense up your upper arm, but don't let the strength into the hand yet. And now gradually open up your forearm and start squeezing the fist. It's supposed to hurt yourself. But you have to feel that the power doesn't get into the hand. And the power where you need it in order to produce sounds, strong sounds, has to be at the contact point. So the power has to go through the hand. And what happens is that when you want to play strong or when you want to play fast, you tighten up your upper arm and nothing happens. All stays there. Instrumental playing requires plain physical strength. Some more, some less. Cello playing requires a great deal of strength of the arms, the hands, and the fingers. At the age of 2, I was thrown into the Lake Balaton, and I've been swimming ever since, and I found that as a musician and instrumentalist, the simplest way to keep my condition as well as my age permits is swimming. Whenever I'm in Bloomington, my home, every night before going to sleep, I swim a certain number of laps, and it seems that considering my number of years, I'm in fairly good physical conditions, and I hope to keep it up as long as I intend to live and to play the cello. The mechanical aspects have to be first controlled, the skill part, so as to allow ourselves eventually, by putting the notes which are equivalent of the letters into syllables, the syllables into words, the words into sentences, and with the sentences eventually we hope to write poetry, or at least be able to rewrite the poetry that has been written by the masters. What is the most important thing about learning on a high level in instrumental playing? Is to learn the geography of the instrument. Have you ever wondered that how on earth can we find the notes when there is this long thing and there's no mark there, nothing? How do we know where the notes are? In order to know where the notes are is what we refer to as the geography of the instrument. We know a certain elements in it, that how to find the notes. That if we cut the string lengths in half, we have an octave. If we cut this half, then we have another octave. Cut it. And that we almost know without looking. That's the only real sort of lamppost what we have, or guiding lights that where the notes to be found. But in order to learn it, that geography, we have to find certain ways of going about this thing. And that one of the most known one, or the simplest one, is that wherever we put down the first finger on the instrument, the position starts. Wherever we put down, the position starts. A position which comprises the four fingers. Between the fingers we have half steps, right? So whenever we play, any part of the instrument is supposed to know that what is the note that we are playing with that first finger and what are the notes within range in that position. So when I go up here, I play a C. It's not the C that I'm thinking of, but the A. This position is the A position, except that there is a problem in the cello playing, that we forget that there are not all the positions are the same. We have four finger positions, which are the same. But from here on, we don't use the fourth finger, only on occasion. So here on, we have something which we call three finger positions. And from here on, we have what we call thumb position. Right? From here on, everything is thumb position. Thumb position can also play also here. Now, but we have to know that whatever note we play on the cello or on the violin, we're not supposed to aim for that note, but for that position in which that note takes place, or happens to find itself. So which means if I go from here, I'm going from here to here, actually. Now, why I'm speaking to you about it? Because your biggest problem is that you haven't learned yet the geography of the instrument. So you're catching flies. And that's what we call that when you play an instrument, catch as catch can. No matter how, if I get there, so far so good, I got the right note eventually. But it should also be considered, how do we get there? And usually that's where the anticipation comes in, that if I go from, I have to get up with my arm so I can get into that position. Now, this geography question is the same for all string instruments, that whenever we play a note, we have to know in advance what position we go into. Because if I go from here to here, it's all the same. Because I'm still... How come that's in tune? I'm not doing anything, I'm not even watching it. I'm only watching that my arm opens up to the same distance. So once I know how to go from here to here, I also know all these myriads of combinations that I was showing. Or it doesn't matter which string it is, as long as the distance is the same. So if you once recognize this and you start practicing this way, then again you learn something, how to save time. Instead of practicing that particular note connection that happens in the Kol Nidre, is just one of the combinations which happens mathematically on the instrument. So first it's far more advantageous to learn the distances. And then, when you go up to high position, don't just simply catch, hopefully, with the percentage chance of 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, but to know that when you go up there, it's always the thumb that goes to place. Then it goes. So when you start, C sharp position. The position change. But the most important thing is, first and foremost, which is the road, so to speak, to learn high-level instrumental playing, is to advance the cause of the geography recognition and the distances, and in place those notes that once you are there, it shouldn't cause any difficulty. And you have to know that when you play a position, you have a third. between the first and the fourth finger. And here you have a fourth. And if you play on two strings, you have either a seventh or a third. Or here either a or a second. It's always the same distance between the thumb and the third finger. And if you learn this, you also learn this. All I'm doing is just holding the same position. Now, of course, this is the geography of the left hand. One sees an instrumentalist play and asks this question of when does he practice and what does he do in order to develop this skill? And in order to sort of explain that what a concert artist can do to keep up his, so to speak, physical conditioning or skill condition that's necessary to perform, I play you an etude which when one studies the instrument, it's part of the sort of the daily diet. Eventually, when one learns the skill on a high level, it may become a kind of a composition that is of enjoyable musical content as well. This is a etude, which is called also Caprice, like the Paganini Caprices for the cello, by a man named Piatti, an Italian cellist of the 19th century. The right hand is how we establish the contact with the string with those things in mind that I already mentioned, how to use the power. Your upper arm is constantly 2 tenths. And that prevents also the left hand function, because one interacts with the other. Now, one of the most important problems in string playing, which involves a bow, what happens to the thumb? You know, nature developed in such a way, as you know, animals have one thing and plus one block. We are fortunate, so to speak, that we separated those and we got 5. But whatever action we do on an instrument, it's always the thumb acting in concert with another finger. And that means that whenever you press down the first finger, it's not the first finger alone that acts, but it's always the contact between the thumb and the first finger. Now, if the second finger acts, then it's the thumb and the second. If the third, it's the thumb and the third, or the thumb and the fourth. But that means that if one finger stops playing, that has to release the tension, and that's what you're not doing. That's why you get stuck here. When you play here, you take the second finger, you lift up, and the second is still tense. And that's why when you go up here, the whole hand is in stitches. Instead of the playing finger, which plays the note, contacting the thumb. But the thumb is the one that's causing all sorts of problems, and it's causing problems for a very simple reason. Wherever two joints meet, they form an angle. And when somewhere in the body an angle is formed, it breaks the muscle line. It doesn't allow the part to go through. So our job is to learn how to make from angles curves. So when we hold the bow, you have to hold the bow in such a way that if you realize, just try to imagine that you're holding the bow. You press the thumb against the first finger, right? See that angle there? That blocks it. It's supposed to make a curve out of it. In that moment, that tension goes. You play the cello, and you press down the thumb, this is what happens. It collapses and it's an ankle. You have to make a curve on it. You hold the violin like this, you get stuck. You have to make a curve on it. Wherever we have these angles, we have to eliminate the angles and make curves out of them. They are here, here, and here, all over the place. And the worst one is the one that happens right here. This is what blocks, doesn't allow to play fluently, because the tension goes down there and there's an angle here. And you have to make a curve out of it. And that's our next investigation, body investigation, which I would like to do with all of you standing. It's a very cruel thing, but it helps. Stand up. Now, would you please stand at ease? Now, slowly lift up both of your shoulders, as high as it becomes very uncomfortable. If it's not uncomfortable, you're cheating. So, very high. And now slowly do what I'm doing. Move back both of your arms. And start rotating them inward. And then come up in front of you so that it forms a circle and meet with the back of the hands in front of your nose. And now, whatever instrument you play, drop suddenly down in the position of that instrumental playing. Cello playing, violin playing, whichever, flute playing. So, if nothing else, the beauty of this exercise is that when you come down, it feels so good. So, would you please do it once more? Up, back. Start rotating inward and make a circle with your back, so it's not like this. And then drop down. And what you're supposed to do now, try moving your fingers, and you will notice that they move very freely, because it's not blocked. Now, the next step in this whole investigation of how to eliminate these things is, would you please sort of suspend your arms, lift up your shoulders, but try to lift it up so as the lifting is done from the back muscles. Because if you don't lift from back muscles, it gets tense here. If you lift it up and then drop down, then you suspend it. Now start shaking your arm, forearm, not the hand, so the hand moves because of the arm shaking. Try to shake it so that it moves up and down. Okay. Now try to move it so that it goes in a circular fashion, like clockwise, circular fashion. Oh, it doesn't move. Turn it up. Circle. Let it hang. Let it hang. No, don't shake. Let it hang. That's it. You understand? It cannot move if you're holding it like this, because then you stir the soup or something. Now, try to do the same thing that with the suspended position to circle it counterclockwise like this. But don't stir. The arm is moving, the forearm is moving, and the hand is making circles. Okay, well, more or less. Well, the basis of it, I missed that one. The basis of it is that you must suspend your arm in such a way that it's hanging, and then the forearm motion will move the hand. Now, go back again to this one. Now stop. And start pressing very strong with the thumb against the index finger, very strong. Now start moving your forearm. What happens? Becomes, the forearm and the hand becomes a unit. And this is the kind of feeling what we need when we play sostenuto on string. Now, keep doing it, press very strong, Now gradually reduce the tension between those two fingers until the hand starts moving. If you know how to do that, then you've solved for the rest of your life bow change. The problem of bow change is that when you're changing bow, if you don't reduce the tension between those two fingers, then the bow cannot change. No way. And if you do it very fast with this reduced tension, then you will learn how to play spiccato very easy. Could you please sit down? And what I'm speaking of is the following. When we are on the string and playing notes like this, if I don't reduce it, this is what happens. Then I reduce the tension at the change, this is what happens. If I keep reducing the tension and making this faster and faster, I start jumping. If I want that it sticks to the string, I press more with those two fingers. If I want to make it jump, I reduce the tension. The motion is the same. So when there's something like a piece is played on the string, I want it off the string. On the string, only these two fingers press a little more, then it sticks to the string. When I release it, it starts jumping. But the most important thing is that when you change bow, and when you will practice bow change scales, whatnot, in order to improve the bow change, remember to reduce the tension of the thumb and the first finger. Mostly the thumb is the one that is causing the problem because it just simply sticks stiffly and it doesn't want to flex, doesn't want to change tension to non-tension. This change to tension to non-tension is one of the most significant secrets of music making and all actions. There is no action in the world where you would do such a thing. Would there?
No.
Would you play ping pong like this? Would you play tennis like this? So why on earth to pick up the ball like this? It always has to be suspended, and then the ball comes into the hand. And then the arm moves. This way it works. First, lift up your arm. Now, you see what you're doing? Let it go, let it hang, let it hang, let it hang. Do you realize how much this ball weighs? Anybody know? It's a little bit less than 3 ounces. Is it possible that to hold up 3 ounces should take so much energy? And the moment when you get a ball, grab it, and then cramp yourself to hold it up. The power is needed to transmit the power through the bow into the string so it makes it sound. But to hold it itself, it takes that little. And it's so safely that it doesn't even fall off, hopefully. One of the things that you should, on occasion, experiment with, to try to find this right way. Rest, let the bow rest like a violin bow. Middle finger, and counterbalance it with the little finger. And find out if it's safely there. Then, place the other fingers. Please a second and do this. But please don't practice it in front of others. The main thing is that it is not grabbed, it's not cramped, and still it's safe within the hand. If it slips, that means that you have not found a way out for the bows. So first do it slowly. I think that you're all familiar with peanut butter. Imagine that your left hand is a piece of bread. The right hand holds a knife, and you take melted butter and spread it on it. How do you do it? Melted butter. Liquid, practically liquid butter. Okay? Now imagine that you are changing now from melted butter to peanut butter. What do you do now? How do you spread it? Much slower, no? And much stronger. Otherwise it just curls up, so which means in order to all what you're supposed to do when you want to play a sostenuto sound, really consistent sound, don't spread melted butter on the cello, but spread peanut butter. And what does it do if we are on the string? Spread melted butter now. And now peanut butter. What you have to do is when you have problems with the left hand, still, and the left hand is in problem, the right hand still supposed to spread peanut butter. But it's too much tension. But the amusing thing is that most every string player, and sees a senior member of the community showing something, invariably look at the left hand. Choose how comes that he finds the notes already. The most important thing is first to solve the right hand, the right arm function, so the sound is a healthy, dependable sound. Then the geography will eventually allow you to be safe and secure in finding the note. That's a much longer process. Music as an art, as we remember, is defined as one of the classic disciplines. Theater, poetry, music, dance. So if it's a discipline, it's supposed to start with discipline. And then eventually, when the discipline is applied, one can allow the luxury of freedom. There are certain elements with which, if one understands those elements, then you realize that it can be a much more enriching experience if you know that music consists of three basic elements, which have many side issues, but there are three basic elements. One is what we refer to as the horizontal element, which is the melody. Which, by the way, should bring home the message that cello, as such, were known through many, many decades, primarily because of this particular melody. The Swan by Saint-Saëns. And whenever people watched movies, theater, and some very tragic happening took place, unreturned love, dying, lung cancer, and whatnot, invariably there was a cello playing. in the background. So in people's mind, cello was associated with sadness and with the man playing it with long hair going down into the eye and very romantically looking at the ladies and playing into their hearts. Performers belong to various categories. And at one point I started speaking of the three elements in music making: horizontal, and I forgot to mention the rest, which is the vertical, which is the harmony and the rhythmic content of a piece of music, and the diagonal, which I refer to, is the emotional content of music. Emotional content is dynamics, timing, colors, and everything else that makes music meaningful. Every artist can be defined that what elements dominate in his playing. Usually somehow the basic human physical characteristics of the player make it possible to determine in advance what will dominate. That if you will see a violinist who is slim, bony, long fingers, that person will most likely have the dominating element in his playing, the vertical. Those with chubby fingers, stocky build, most likely will be more horizontal and a diagonal in their playing. The ideal would be a combination of all three. It seldom happens, but a professional musician is supposed to learn that how these elements function and what are their place in music making. But ultimately still his basic character will come through. When I'm playing, I'm primarily concerned to perform to the best of my abilities at the given moment. The preparation is where all the search for colors, feelings, sounds, smells, sex, everything goes in order to associate with the given composition. Once on stage, it happens on occasion that one had a bad flight, so it takes a little while to truly immerse oneself in the event at hand. But basically at the moment on stage, the only concentration is the next phrase and the entire composition, so as to be able to create a totality of the work that is being played. It's a nonsensical thing to call somebody the king of cellist or the greatest cellist, because there's no such thing. The fact is, I do consider myself that I'm a high standard cellist, and what I do can be only judged on musical basis, whether somebody likes it or not. The aristocratic issue is that I happen to believe in my trinity, which is balance, purity, and simplicity. Now, these elements may describe in some people's mind the aristocratic attitude. It also, in my mind, describes the fact that I'm not playing music in the way that one refers to as sentimentally. I have as much emotion as I think ever met anybody else in my life, except that I'm not sentimental, and my music making is void of sentimentalism. The issue of classical music as such is misunderstood in most instances, not by you people, because I take it that you are going to concerts and you buy tickets to concert and you support the art, so to speak, and you hope that your children will get the benefit of music as such. Because this is a benefit which very simply can be described of something that enriches life. It's not essential in the sense for most people as food and shelter is, or procreation, but it is something that in human existence is maybe the highest form of expression, and in communication its benefits are pretty much the most enriching aspect of life. But we can live without it, not as musicians, we cannot. And that leads to the question why someone does in music what one does. Not because it is a way of making a living. It's a side benefit that if one does it well, then eventually you get enough rewards for it so you can have a comfortable existence, in some instances even becoming rich. But the issue is that it is part of our lives in a way that we cannot wake up in the morning and go through a day without music, no way. And if anyone gets into music without having this absolutely essential aspect of it, that music means just as much as eating and drinking or living, then that person should not be in music.